There we go. Okay, so good evening, everybody. Great to see you. Great to see some of my clients on the call as well, and some old faces that I haven't seen for a while. It's really lovely to see you guys. And tonight I'm going to be talking about how to reduce overwhelm and enhance focus using Professor Porges' Safe and Sound protocol. Okay, so I was wondering whether you could type in the comments, does anybody know anything about the Safe and Sound protocol? Is this the first time you're learning about this? Is it completely foreign to you? Just let me know in the comments, just give me an idea of what that means to you. Um, let's have a look there. Okay. So first time, Sam's saying first time, Tara's saying I've never heard of it before. Lucy, I know a little bit about the polyvagal theory, but not the safe and sound protocol. Fantastic. Okay, so hopefully you're going to find this very, very informative this evening. Okay, so I'll just take you through the overview of my slides. I'm going to be talking a little bit about polyvagal theory. I'm absolutely passionate about polyvagal theory myself. I use it in my client work. I use it in the workshops and the trainings that I do for corporations and organizations. So I'm passionate about it. I'll talk a little bit about neuroception, which is a phrase that Professor Porges coined himself, which is all about how we detect danger, either danger or safety. So talking about the features and benefits of the Safe and Sound protocol, supporting evidence. So I used to work in the pharmaceutical and healthcare industry, so I'm very much very interested, should I put it that way, in evidence and research. I'll share a few case studies and testimonials with you guys as well. And then I'm going to give you an overview of how the Safe and Sound protocol works. So the actual protocol involved, and all the sort of the little pointers around that as well. So a little bit about me. So I work with individuals and organizations, helping them to reduce overwhelm and to prevent stress and burnout. So this is a topic I'm absolutely passionate about. It's really, really important to help, busy professionals, especially in today's world with so much drama going on in the world. If we look at what's happened over the last 4 or 5 years since the pandemic, there's been all sorts of stress and drama in the world at large, right? And so it can be tough out there for working professionals. People that are trying to hold down jobs, that are running businesses, that are running, leadership teams, etc. And so being aware of mental health and stress and how we can reduce those stress levels is really, really important for improving productivity, improving performance, helping people to become happier and more successful. That's really what it's all about. Because successful people are people that are, that are going to be able to show up, that are going to be able to give their best. And mental health and nervous system regulation plays a huge, huge part in that. So I'm an accredited ICF trauma-informed coach. So that means that I'm accredited with the International Coaching Foundation. I've also done therapy training as well. I'm trained in a modality called EMDR, which is really, really, really useful at helping to remove the emotional charge from a really, really stressful event that's happened. So I've done lots of sort of therapy training as well. And I work with individuals, so I have my one-to-one clients, and I work with organizations and teams as well. So I have a really lovely mix of both. I'm also a partner with the Mental Wellbeing Company, and the Mental Wellbeing Company offer a huge range of workshops and trainings. One of the trainings that we've recently launched actually is the Mental Health First Aid Practitioner Training. We also do a Mental Health First Aid Awareness Training. And these are really, really, really important, especially in the UK. All of our workshops are CPD accredited. We also do positive psychology workshops for teams and trauma-informed workshops as well. So we really have a huge range sort of to cover all different sectors, public sector as well as the corporate world as well. So I haven't always been doing what I do. My background was actually in the corporate world. So I worked in pharmaceutical companies. I worked in the medical device and the healthcare industries as well. And I worked mostly primarily in commercial roles. So sales, key account management, business development roles. I had some fantastic jobs. I got some great experience in working within the NHS. And so that was where I came from. It was around about 2017, 2018 that I decided that I wanted to retrain, and I slowly started to retrain in what I'm doing now. So just a little bit about my background. I also was born in Cape Town. You can probably detect the accent, that I don't have a British accent. However, I have been here for, well, it feels like an eternity now. It's just pretty much coming up to 25, 30 years. So I pretty much, consider myself to be English, really. Something that people don't know about me is that I'm actually a terrorism survivor. So I was involved in a really brutal terrorist attack when I was still living in South Africa, so back in the day. And that really, really affected my life in that I had really bad PTSD for a couple of years. And I really, really struggled with that. I thought that there was something wrong with me. I grew up in a culture and a family which was very much about pushing through and, just getting on with it and soldiering on, so to speak. And I really, really struggled, especially with the physiological effects of PTSD. If anyone's ever been through a really stressful event, you'll understand what I mean when I say that, things like uncontrollable shaking, feeling extremely fearful, waking up in the night, having panic attacks, all of that kind of stuff that's, those symptoms that are involved with PTSD. That was me. That was where I came from. So I think that that's what sparked my interest in the whole mental health field. And I really wanted to find out more about PTSD, more about, what kind of treatment I could have for it. And that's what led me to discovering a therapy called EMDR, which I'm very, very passionate about. It worked really, really well for me, but also led me into my interest in the nervous system and, understanding how we respond to stress, why we react the way we do, how our physiological responses influence our behavior and how we think. And so that was what really led me on this journey to where I am now. I'm passionate about learning. I will always be a lifelong learner. And when I'm really interested in something, you can ask my friends and family, I will research like a lawyer. Like I will literally research everything I can find about that topic. That's really what makes me tick. Okay, so that interest and that passion in learning and development. So let's have a little look at polyvagal theory. So polyvagal theory was founded by this man. He's actually a professor, Professor Stephen Porges. And it really is all about explaining how our autonomic nervous system responds to stress, safety, and social interactions. So if you have a look at that little chart, you can see that's a little chart explaining the polyvagal hierarchy. So it's really about the hierarchy in the autonomic system. And we have really 3 different levels. So we have at the bottom, we have what we call the ventral vagal state. The middle of that graph, we have what we call the sympathetic, which is commonly known as the fight-flight response. And then the top of the graph there, you can see the red zone, which is what we call dorsal vagal. And this is the freeze response. So I'm not going to get too much into the sort of the biology, but if you imagine the green zone, that ventral vagal state as being, it's what we call the safe and social zone. So when you're in the green zone, this is when you feel relaxed, you're body language is open, you feel safe, you feel resourced. This is when your rational brain is fully online. This is when you can make rational, logical decisions. This is when you can access your creativity. This is when your best ideas are come online. This is when you are able to engage with others socially from a place of feeling safe and grounded. Okay. What happens then is, life happens, things trigger us, we become stressed, we have traumatic events happening, and our nervous system is designed to respond to stress. And so we go into that what we call that sympathetic fight-flight response. So words associated with the sympathetic fight-flight response would be alert, activated, focused. They all sound like really good things. It's good to be focused, right? It's good to be activated. But what happens when that fight-flight response becomes, it sort of moves to the top end of the spectrum, so to speak? That's when we get anxiety. That's when we start to feel panicked. That's when we become reactive. We become hypervigilant. We can't sleep at night. We may have panic attacks. So that's that hyperadrenalized state. I'm sure we can all relate to that, right? I'm sure we've all had those moments where we've just got, in that real sort of fight-flight response. The top, that red zone that you can see at the top there, is what we call dorsal vagal. Now, dorsal vagal is very much a shutdown response. When you've been in that fight-flight response for a long time, and you've had lots of adrenaline rushing through your system, sometimes your nervous system will go into that, what we call that freeze or that shutdown. And this is when you feel completely disconnected. There's a sense of overwhelm. There's a sense of, I can't do this. I can't go on. And this is when, clients will say that they feel stuck. They feel like they can't focus. There's a sense of a little bit of disassociation when you're there. And those are those days where you just want to sort of lie in bed and not do anything. You just feel like, I can't do this anymore. This is just all too much. That is a normal stress response. Okay, that's your nervous system trying to protect you, and that's very, very common to have that response, especially when you've had lots of stress. You may have had a lot of trauma building up over the years, and you go into that shutdown response. I had a client who was a very, very successful financial executive. History of working in the trading sector, very high pressure, high stress job. And he had lots of sort of stressful events in his life. And, he did what most people do. You just push through. And eventually he got to a point where he just felt completely shut down, completely burnt out, and just complete emotional exhaustion. That shutdown, that's what happens. So that's why this kind of work, having awareness around this is really, really important. And it's all part of self-care, okay? So the purpose of working with this model is it forms a scientific framework for why we feel safe, anxious, or shut down in specific situations. And why this is important is because this is what influences our emotions. So how we feel, how we think, and how we behave. So if I'm in fight-flight response all the time and I'm feeling really anxious, I'm probably going to be feeling really fearful. I'm probably going to be feeling really annoyed. Everyone's going to irritate me. My perception of danger is going to become heightened. And that's going to influence my thoughts. And you might go into catastrophic thinking. You might start believing that, nobody likes you, everybody's against you. And that's going to influence your behavior. And so instead of being able to behave in a collaborative way with colleagues, for example, or with your family, you're going to become very defensive, and that's not going to make for good communication. So how we respond affects our decision-making. It affects our performance, how we show up in the world, how productive we are, and how we interact with friends, family, loved ones, etc. Okay, so those three states, just to recap again, we have the ventral vagal. This is where, this is also known as social engagement. This is where we're able to co-regulate. We talk about co-regulation, which is the ability to co-regulate with other human beings. So there's connection, there's compassion, there's safety when we're in that polyvagal, that ventral vagal state. It's all about homeostasis, balance, health and growth, resilience, flexibility, and resourcefulness. Okay. That sympathetic state, as I mentioned, this is when you start having adrenaline going through your system. You become mobilized, your body's preparing you to fight or to flight. There's activation, there's energy. Now that can be a really healthy state, but that can be associated with energy, with playfulness. If you think about when you're working, you need to have little bits of activation in your system to get you moving, to get you going, right? And so there's motivation there, but when that becomes out of whack, so there's too much of that sympathetic energy, that's when we go into anxiety, and it becomes, it becomes a problem then. So that's that shutdown state. As I mentioned, there's shutdown, there's collapse, there's disconnection, there's feeling hopeless, feeling helpless. Let me know in the comments if any of you have ever felt that you've been in that sort of that dorsal vagal shutdown where you've just felt like, I can't do this anymore. Let me know. I've been there before, so I know exactly what it's like. And what I want you to understand as well is that there's very much, you're going to sense these states very much in your body. So it's not just emotions, but you're actually going to sense that, that heaviness when you're in that shutdown dorsal vagal state as well. And then, of course, when you're in sympathetic activation, there's going to be lots of sort of nervous energy going through your body. This is when people can't sit still and they have to kind of jump around, run around all the time, so to speak. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about neuroception. Neuroception is a phrase that Professor Porges coined, and this is all about how our subconscious detects cues of threat and safety from our body, our environment, and our relationships. Now, these cues aren't they below your level of awareness. Okay, so little things like micro expressions on people's faces, body language, even things like, rolling your eyes or sort of sighing, things like that. Our nervous system is constantly picking up on those cues. Okay, and we're either going to get signals that say this person is safe, this environment is safe, or we're going to get signals of danger. So they can be very, very, very subtle, okay? And that's what neuroception is all about. So when we have cues of safety, when the cues of safety that we're getting from our environment are greater than our cues of danger, then our body is going to be in homeostasis. There's going to be slower breathing, there's going to be slower heart rate, there's going to be less inflammation, reduced pain, lower blood pressure. And then we're going to feel relaxed and composed, open and connected, curious, at ease. And what's interesting is our capacity for self-regulation and co-regulation is going to be enhanced, okay? So when you feel safe within your team, your working environment, or your family or relationship, whatever it is, you're going to be able to regulate yourself as well, which is really, really important, okay? When your cues of danger are greater than your cues of safety, you're going to have the effects in your body, okay? And we've all been there. We've had the butterflies in your tummy and your heart rate is pounding. The breathing becomes a lot faster. There's tension in your muscles. Your whole body is primed for danger. And then there's going to be hypervigilant. You're going to be very defensive. You're going to be usually very reactive. So you're going to react rather than responding to things. And there's that sense of overwhelm. And there's no capacity when you hear, or there's certainly reduced capacity for self-regulation as well as co-regulation. Okay. So polyvagal theory is all about coming back to that balanced state, which is what we call the social engagement system. And the social engagement system is really that hybrid state of activation and calming. So you're going to feel safe, but you're going to have a little bit of activation in your system. And this state can only be accessed through the ventral vagal state. Okay. And it allows for the emergence of co-regulation, which supports a sense of safety and connection with others and with yourself. So this is where the safe and sound protocol comes into being. So when I work, I've been working with polyvagal theory, as I say, with clients for quite a long time now. And there are lots of exercises, techniques that you can do using polyvagal theory as a tool. But there was something called the safe and sound protocol that I've been wanting to try and to bring into my practice for a while. And I'm delighted that I now finally have it. I've done the training. And the safe and sound protocol, I think, is a game changer in polyvagal theory, because you don't have to do anything. You have to follow the protocol. And it's all around listening. So it's an evidence-based listening therapy. And what it does is it reduces sound sensitivities. It improves auditory processing, behavioral state processing, and social engagement behaviors. So what Professor Porges has done in his expertise is he's taken music and he's worked out a way of filtering the music in a purposeful way to produce the frequency of a melodic human voice. So it helps to shift the nervous system out of a state of defense. It helps you to receive cues of safety from your environment. And it dampens the appearance of lower background sounds. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the lower frequencies and the higher frequencies in a few seconds. But it really helps you to shift out of that hypervigilant state. And it supports the retuning of the nervous system for connection. So it's a little bit like a workout for your nervous system. Okay, so if you think about, going to the gym, you will maybe start with 20 minutes of exercise and then you're going to build it up. The safe and sound protocol works in a similar way. It's a workout for the nervous system. And the general rule of thumb is that we start out small with little bits, and then we build up as we go. Okay. So these are some of the documented effects of the safe and sound protocol. And these have been collected from clients who have been through the program. And these are the effects that have been documented by their healthcare providers. So first of all, social communication and connection becomes easier and more spontaneous. People are able to engage on a social level. So really, really great for, social anxiety, people who struggle to sort of mingle and communicate in teams and groups. Enhanced emotional control and the ability to regulate, to self-regulate your emotions. Lower levels of anxiety. Improved sensory I can't see that. Improvement in sensory regulation. So improvements in auditory and sensory sensitivities. And this is quite important for people with ADHD and autism as well, where that sensory regulation can be a challenge. Executive function. Very, very important for anyone who's on the ADHD spectrum. And they really struggle with that sort of that scattered thinking. So there's been documented evidence to show that there's an improved access to executive functioning and higher cognitive abilities. So you're able to focus, you're able to hold attention for longer. There's improved learning and enhanced expressive and receptive language skills. What's really, really interesting, actually, what I found was really, really interesting is the effects it has on your physiology, physical health. So reduction in pain, which I thought was super interesting, and improvement in sleep as well. So the science behind Safe and Sound Protocol, I wanted to share this study with you because I thought this was really, really interesting as well. In 2022, they did a study with mothers and infants. And what they did was they recorded the mothers' voices as they interacted with their babies to figure out what vocal features would influence or would have the greatest influence on the infant's autonomic response. And what they found was that the strong middle frequencies that reduced the high and the low frequencies with fluctuations in intonation produced a calming and regulating effect on the babies. So that was really, really interesting. So when you have lots of low frequency sounds, these elicit a sense of danger in the nervous system. And then really, really high pitched frequencies evoke a sense of alert, and again evoke that sort of that threat response. So low frequencies would be things like, let's go back there, things like thunder rumbling or a lion roaring, you know, sort of really low frequencies. There's an association with danger, and so they're going to trigger that state of defense. And then high frequencies, if you think about, you know, a car alarm going off, or a ambulance, or a really high-pitched cry, you know, somebody shrieking in that high-pitched tone, they're also going to trigger that's a state of defense, a state of that fight-flight response. And what's interesting is that when the middle ear muscles aren't functioning properly, and I'm going to explain what can cause the middle ear the middle ear muscles to not function properly. But when they're not functioning properly, the high or low pitched frequencies are perceived dominantly. So that means that someone will only sort of see the high or perceive the low or high pitched frequencies, and the middle ear frequencies will sort of fade into the background, so to speak. And so the perception of middle frequencies will be altered, and this again will produce signals of threat, which means that the individual will shift towards more defensive state. So in the context of SSP then, we're only interested in frequencies of sound that transmit cues of safety. So what they've done is they filtered the music so that mid-range frequencies are emphasized, which then promote cues of safety. So it's really, really interesting what they've done there. They've filtered out the really high-pitched and the really low-pitched frequencies. And so what happens then is the middle ear muscles are contracted to tighten the eardrum to allow mid-range frequencies to be more easily perceived. And another thing that I found really, really interesting, and I didn't know this, is that factors that affect the functioning of the middle ear, if someone has a really influential trauma history, so history of, you know, lots of distressing things happening in their life, people with autism, and where you have a chronic nervous system defense state. So this has an effect on the middle ear, and this is where the Safe and Sound protocol can be really, really useful. So let me know in the comments how you're finding this. Are you finding this interesting? I will come back to the comments in a few seconds. So the Safe and Sound protocol really seeks to recruit and exercise the middle ear muscles to better dampen loud and low frequency sounds, to better perceive middle range frequencies. I just thought I'd share a little bit of real world evidence with you. So these are stats that were taken from assessment results. And what they did was I had different groups of clients that went through the Safe and Sound protocol. And most of the groups were between sort of 100 and 150 people in each group. And they found that 61% of clients with anxiety symptoms moved from clinical to non-clinical, which is pretty impressive. 54% of clients with depression moved from clinical to non-clinical. 63% of clients with trauma-related symptoms moved from clinical to non-clinical. And then 47% of clients experiencing psychosocial challenges. So, you know, social anxiety and that sort of thing, moved from impaired to not impaired. So there's some great data, there's some great research supporting this, which is why I really like it as well. So the Safe and Sound protocol has 3 different protocols or programs. So it's a very directive approach. It's not just a case of putting your headphones on and listening to music. You have to go through the program correctly. So it starts out with what we call the Connect protocol. This is almost like the warm-up protocol. Then you move on, once you're used to that, you move on to the core. And then the final protocol, once you've been through the core, is the balance. So again, if you had to use the analogy of working out at the gym, your Connect's going to be your warm-up, your core is going to be your sort of high impact, you know, cardiovascular workout, whatever. And then your balance is going to be your stretch and your cool down. So each protocol has a selection of playlists. Each playlist is 5 hours of music. So it's really, you have the ability to sort of go through the playlists and select which music you like. And it will be music that you know. So it will be certain sort of songs and tunes that were hits at some point that you'll actually be familiar with. So it's quite fun actually from that perspective. So the music is delivered in 10 minutes, up to 30 minutes chunks at a time, several days a week, depending on your capacity to regulate. So if someone is very, very dysregulated and they haven't done any kind of nervous system regulation work or breath work or anything like that, then they would normally start with maybe 5 minutes and then slowly build that up to 10 minutes, and then, you know, up to 30-minute chunks at a time. So everybody's very different, and everybody has a slightly different protocol. Okay. Over-the-ear headphones have to be worn. Each protocol requires 5 hours of listening time, but as I say, these are spread out in 10-minute chunks, 20-minute chunks, 30-minute chunks, etc. The Safe and Sound protocol can only be delivered under the supervision of a practitioner. Okay, so what this means is that you will have a couple of one-to-one sessions with your practitioner. You will then be able to access it remotely. So there is an app that you can download. So you'll be able to log into your app and access your music remotely. But it's about checking back with your practitioner, you know, so sort of having regular check-ins once a week, once every 2 weeks, to see how you're getting on over that 12-week period. So you don't just go away and listen to it yourself and just do your own thing. You have to have, as I say, regular check-ins to make sure that you're getting on okay, and that you're progressing and that you're happy with it. Now, what's interesting as well is when you actually listen to the music, it can be done in tandem with regulating activities. And what we mean by regulating activities, so these would be things like mindful activities. So for example, you could sit and you could draw, or you could do some, you know, some gentle sort of stretching, some movements. You could maybe do a little bit of gardening. Nothing that's going to require lots of focus or lots of concentration. So you couldn't pop your music on and sit and do your work. But, you know, doodling with your pen, or, you know, doing some artwork or something like that would be absolutely fine. And actually we encourage that, because that really makes for that sort of integrated experience, so to speak. The Safe and Sound protocol can be used for children, and the minimum age is 2. So you can imagine that children that are on the Safe and Sound protocol could sit and they can do their play with Play-Doh and, you know, do all sorts of arts and crafts and activities while they actually are listening to the music as well.